Hey repeaters, welcome back to the channel. So about a year ago, I bought my first RSD bike, a bike that I always wanted to get my hands on, the V4 Sergeant. You can see my video overview of this bike, and I'll put a link in the description, as well as put a card here so you can click on it and watch that video. When I bought that back in December of 2021, it was the adventure build, with a rigid fork and the 4-inch tires. I was really happy for some winter riding. In that video, I mentioned the other two configuration that RSD had listed on their website. So in this video, I wanted to do a long-term review of the V4 Sergeant and also give you my thoughts on the free build types, as I've now had the opportunity to ride that bike in all three configurations. I'll also share my thoughts on which of the two summer builds are best for which styles of riding. So let's get started. To begin, we kick things off with the adventure build. This configuration has the 4-inch terrain cake eater tires, which are studdable and which I did stud with Fat Bike Canada's excellent hex studs. It has RSD's own aluminum fork with some bosses for mounts and plenty of clearance for those 4-inch tires. It's pretty obvious that the use case for this bike is, and let's just say it really holds up to those intentions. I found that riding in Southern Ontario with this setup was perfect. The volume of these tires don't quite reach that 4-inch range, but they're pretty close, and set up tubeless with low pressures, it easily handled local trails around here in the winter, such as Hydrocut, or Durham Forest, or HAFTA, and the like. This was only improved when I added the studs. So, as you can see, the pros of this build were large flotation over snow, low maintenance, relatively lightweight with the tubeless setup, and multiple attachment points for the fork and the frame. On the not so plus side, pun intended, the only real con I could find was with the tubeless setup. You definitely need an air compressor, which I didn't have, but was fortunate to have my local shop seat the beads for me. Alright, next, let's check out the summer options. There are two available from RSD's website. I tried them both, but on the 27 Plus version, I used a different fork and tire combo. The fork was direct from RSD, which was a Manitou Maddock, you can see in the previous video, which was awesome. It was a bit heavy, but I put on my own preference of tires as well, which were 2.8-inch Maxxis Recons, which actually worked out very well. The highlight of this 27 Plus setup in the summer was twofold. One, its steamroll ability, and two, traction. This was by far the heaviest setup, but it made up for it when gravity took over. Since I tried this setup before the 29er version, I got used to how much I could plow through roots and rocks without a second thought. It got me into trouble though when I switched to the 29er mode, because the 27 Plus was so great at hitting those awkward angles going over roots, but I'll touch more on that later. I appreciated the grip on the 27 Plus as well, mostly in the corners as you could really carve a line and lean that bike over. This was very fun, but it took more rider input and muscle to make quick changes. In addition, it was noticeably slower climber, especially compared to that 29er version. So in summary, the pros for the 27 Plus were the steamroll ability, fast and fun when it's up to speed, traction, and forgiveness. The cons were that it was indeed the heaviest setup. It wasn't as quick with the climbing and certainly not as maneuverable. And finally, I was able to get a hold of that 29er version as well. I ended up buying the 29 build as a separate bike, so that one came with an 11-speed NX drivetrain and the DVO fork with Maxxis Minion 2.6-inch tires. It was noticeably quicker right off the first pedal stroke, and the climbing was much improved in my opinion. This was the bike I was hoping the 27 Plus would be. It rolled over things as well in a straight line, but when the tires hit roots at an awkward corner, things got pretty dicey. So case in point, on a tame part of a trail, which I've ridden hundreds of times, there's this one corner with an exposed root which comes up on a right-hander. It was my first time on this 29er build, and I was so used to how that 27 Plus just tractored over things, but I didn't even give it much thought. When the 29er wheel hit, it caught the root on the edge of a tire and promptly threw me right over the bars. I got one of the worst injuries, which I'm still recovering from, on my right elbow due to this crash. Needless to say, I learned my lessons and started to treat the 29er build as an actual 29 bike and not a steamroller. Things improved a lot, and I really enjoyed how quick the bike maneuvered around obstacles and how fast I could clean those technical climbs. Overall, for Southern Ontario, I say this would be my personal choice out of the two summer builds. So in summary, the pros for this build were, it's the best climber, it's the fastest version, it's more maneuverable. And the cons, not as compliant or forgiving, and not as composed in the corners and in some straight line situations. So let's compare all three together in this chart. The winter build, adventure build, is pretty straightforward and lives up to its intentions. It is exactly what you would expect, no surprises, and I really enjoyed it in the winter. I could also see some bike packing situations in the summer with this build. The 27 Plus build was a great build for rockier or rootier terrain, which gives up some speed for grip. I guess that's not a real surprise there. If your trails are more down than up and you like to rail those corners, this for sure was an awesome build. The 29er build was my personal favorite, with a great balance of quickness, great climbing agility, and with trails for equal amounts of ups and downs with some technical features. This would be my recommendation in the summer. Overall, this bike is a blaster ride in any of those configurations because the geometry is dialed, the build kits suit their intended use, and some of the frame details are nice, such as those sliding dropouts, mounting points, and plenty of tire clearance. This frame was designed to be a Swiss Army knife, and I can sure attest that this meets those intentions. I like that you can mix and match this frame with any of those build kits, and you can customize it from scratch. It's a really great project kind of bike if you're looking to build up things or if you like to tinker on your bike. So, after a year of ownership, would I say there were any improvements which I would like to see? Yeah, a couple of things to note. One, the paint on this frame seems to rub off easy. I have a hitch mount bike rack which ratchets down with one of those top tube kind of grips. It has rubber on it. And even with care and light use, I found that the paint starts chipping and rubbing off in that same section where it makes contact with the bike rack. The same thing happens if the chain starts to slap on any part of a chainstays, which also leads to my second point. So number two, there isn't really any frame protection that comes with it, although they do include kind of like a sock that wraps around the chainstay, which is fine, but I'd really love to see some of that built-in rubber protection, which comes standard on so many other bikes these days. I think it does a better job, and it also helps quiet things down a lot more. I guess thirdly, if I'm being nitpicky, but it's the dropper post options that come from RSD Direct. If you choose one of their build kit options, they charge you $300 for a 150mm travel dropper in size large, which is a KS Lav, and personally I wouldn't touch those myself. I'd love to see some other dropper options, and I personally went with a PNW loam post with a loam lever, which you can handily get for about that same $300 price point, shipped to Canada, and I think that would be a better option, but hey, that's personal preference. So overall, after a year of use, I'd have to say that I'm quite impressed with the level of quality and the level of details that you get on this frame and on those different build kit options. It certainly is a bike that you can play around with to suit your best riding needs. And I like the fact that you can have one frame and multiple bikes in any scenario. So I do recommend this bike, and I do recommend RSD. I have to say the customer service has always been top notch, and I appreciate that it's a Canadian company. Thanks very much for watching this video, guys. Please do tell me what you think of this bike. Is this something you'd be interested in? Do you like a Swiss Army knife or bike, or do you just have more bikes in the stable? Appreciate the comments, guys, and remember, as always, you are what you repeat. Take care.